National Football League versus the Philadelphia Eagles on the case of the blocked field goal. Action.
Your Honor, we have a problem here in the National Football League. As many of you are aware, we tried to ban a play known as the brotherly shove, the tush push at the owners' meetings. It did not come to fruition because some cowardly teams decided they did not want to ban the pushing of the tush, or as George Stephanopoulos calls it, the push tush. They didn't ban it, but we have a new play, Your Honor, we'd like to ban. It is called the blocked field goal. You see, the Philadelphia Eagles were losing 26-7 in week 3 of the regular season against the Los Angeles Rams. But late in the game, the Philadelphia Eagles sent 2 very large men, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, out to the field. And they blocked the field goal. And it was very upsetting to a lot of people. And then with the game on the line, an opportunity for the Los Angeles Rams to go down the field to kick a field goal to win the game 29-27. Those 2 big men, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, they collapsed the line. And Jordan Davis, he blocked a field goal yet again. And then he not only blocked it and ended any chance of the Rams winning, he scooped that ball. He ran nearly 19 miles per hour, which is the fastest any player over 300 pounds has run since at least 2017. And he scored a touchdown. Your Honor, we have to ban the blocked field goal. The tush push didn't happen yet. Blocked the field goal. That has to get outlawed too. And while we're at it, our third play that we're going to be bringing up is called banning A.J. Brown from receiving the football and making big plays, like stepping over a guy like Allen Iverson in Game 1 of the 2001 NBA Finals. Your Honor, I'll let it rest with you. 3-0, let's go! Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. And it's also the name of the show. It is a special morning edition, and this is not because we're changing the show from the afternoon to the morning now. No, this is just a byproduct of something that I totally forgot was happening, but I believe was probably told to me, and I just totally forgot. Video guy Amadeo is not going to be around this week. He's going on a little trip, and he might be going to see Bucky. And so since he won't be around, that means all the short-form content that kind of lives across TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, well, it would all go bye-bye if I couldn't get an episode in quickly enough before Video Guy Amadeo leaves for his trip. And so we are doing this episode a little bit earlier in the day, and that's going to allow all of our normal channels to be healthy and have video content going out every day, and it's going to be fine. And it also gives us the opportunity to react very early to an Eagles game that I think, if we're all being honest, we thought was about to go sideways in the worst possible way. An Eagles game that had me go, wow, I knew things could be bad. I knew the Kevin Patullo offense could be bad, but holy shit, the first half of the game against the Rams took that to an entirely different level. A tuna can offense, as we once described the Brian Johnson offense, and I believe even back to like the early Dougie P days, if I remember correctly, back on the original Crossing broadcast with myself, Kyle, and Lefko, we used to refer to Doug Peterson's offense at times as a tuna can offense. It was as wide as it was, tall. It was a tuna can. And so you didn't get a lot of balls going past let's say 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. It was looking bad. Things were looking horrible against the Rams. And then all of a sudden, the Philadelphia Eagles, led by none other than Jalen Hurts, mounted a ferocious comeback. They put together a second half for the ages. And honestly, not to be a prisoner of the moment, this is easily one of the most impressive regular season comeback wins I can ever remember watching as a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. I am going to pull the comments up, bottom right side of the corner. If you want to, you can certainly weigh in with your comments on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Remember, if you're on X, you have to click the video first, go into old Periscope mode, and then you type your comment, and it'll come up on the screen. I'll try to get to as many as I can today. There are a lot of things I want to get to today. Now, some of them are stat-based. Some of them are the immediate reactions by some of the national media pundits that are out there as well. Maybe not totally surprisingly, national media seems kind of beside themselves because we had this whole thing going on, right, where People have wanted to count the Eagles out. They've wanted to count Jalen Hurts out. There have been concerns about this offense through 2 weeks, but the Eagles were 2-0. And it feels like now there's a little bit of a shift of narrative going on in the national media because the Eagles are now 3-0. They took down a Rams team that many consider to be the second best team in the National Football Conference. That is true. People believe that the Rams could legitimately be the second best team in the conference. I know that a lot of people would say the Packers, but the Packers did just blow a horrific game where they allowed the Browns to come back in a big way and take them down with a last-second field goal. The Cleveland Browns gave the Packers their first loss, and on this auspicious day, I guess, or auspicious day, the Eagles take down the Rams. And again, third quarter, it's 26-7. There is little to no life in this team. It looks as though the Eagles forgot about A.J. Brown again. There were moments where it looked like they were trying to get him involved in the game. We saw a lot of inside handoffs to Saquon Barkley that went much like they have gone in the first 2 weeks of the season, where they don't get you much. Seems like something is easy to be read by the defense. And so this offense was sputtering. And then there was a little bit of not a dust-up, but there was a little bit of a conversation in the second half on the sideline between Jalen Hurts and Kevin Patullo over on the sideline. And there was a video going around of where Hurts didn't exactly get in the face of his offensive coordinator, but he kind of got in the face of his offensive coordinator. And in doing so, he might have saved the game. He might have saved the season to some extent, because make no mistake about it, this was about as bad of a game as you could have had in the first half. And Hurts, at some point, something pivoted, something shifted, where this team went from being an overly conservative one into being one that allows their stars to go out and get the job done. It was something that A.J. Brown actually talked about after the game as well, that he's of the belief that, like, you have these guys, you have players on this team that are absolute bona fide studs. You have guys on this team who are absolute bona fide killers on this team. Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. You have all those guys. At some point, you need to be willing to let off the reins, right? Let go of the reins a little bit and let those guys go out and lead, and let them lead in a meaningful way and find a way to win. And that's exactly what started to happen in the second half. Now, I will show you really quickly a couple of the things that happened in this game. And we'll, of course, get to some of the stats and some of the breakdowns. And listen, Jalen Hurts has just been incredible. I mean, let's start with this one. This is a stat that I think everybody is well aware of. But Jalen Hurts, in his last 17 games where he has started and ended the game, we take out that one game where he got knocked out with a concussion against the Commanders late last season. His last 17 games where he has started and finished a game, including the playoffs, Jalen Hurts is 17-0. That is absurd. That is crazy. That makes no sense, except that the guy is a winner. Now, it would be kind of ridiculous to sit back and say this was all Jalen Hurts in this game, because it wasn't. Listen, the defense made some big plays. We could start with a Zach Bond interception very early in this game against Matthew Stafford that felt like it was going to be a momentum shift. There were some solid defensive plays made even in the second half. Maybe the most consequential substitution made in the game, after Lane Johnson comes out with a stinger in his neck, Johnson comes out, they put Matt Pryor in at right tackle. It does not go well. Hurts gets demolished at one point. I mean, Hurts gets smacked upside the head. And it's a nasty-looking hit. It's a clean hit, but it's a nasty-looking hit. And so the Eagles ultimately choose that instead of having Matt Pryor go back in, they send Fred Johnson out to right tackle. And that was confirmed after the game. Fred Johnson has not practiced at right tackle. He has taken no snaps at right tackle, even, I guess, going back to the preseason. Ever since he's been here, at least this year, has not taken a snap at right tackle. And yet, Fred Johnson goes in, and it's almost like, do you remember when Brett Brown years ago talked about Jimmy Butler? And he said, well, there's an adult in the room. You know, James Butler was the adult in the room. It felt like that. They send Fred Johnson out. Fred Johnson solidifies the right side of the line. And all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts is once again afforded the opportunity to make plays in a meaningful way, to find seams in the defense if he needs to pick up some yards with his legs. There were some designed runs in this game, something that we haven't seen a whole lot of through the first 2 weeks of the season. We didn't see the breakdown at the line or everyone's covered, and so Jalen just makes things happen with his legs. We actually saw designed runs. We saw some options. But I want to go out to the thing that I kind of alluded to a little bit ago, which is Jalen Hurts goes over to the sideline and gets around Kevin Patullo, kind of gets into his face a little bit about whatever the hell is going on. Now, mind you, this doesn't happen when it's 26-7. This is as Jalen Hurts very clearly, like, something changed in this game No one came out after the fact and said, what was the pivotal shift? What actually changed? But when this game got to 26-21, Jalen Hurts goes up to Kevin Patullo on the sideline. I want you to just see really quickly what he does. He goes over, he's talking to his offensive coordinator, and very clearly, right? Like he's having a conversation. This is what you want to see. But he's talking to his guys. He's talking to the coaches on the sideline, telling them what he sees. This is what leadership looks like. This isn't a way to try to demean. It's not a way to try to embarrass. Jalen Hurts isn't going out of his way and getting overly demonstrative, right? He's going over, he's talking, he's meeting you at your level. If you're sitting on the bench until you stand up, he's meeting at your level. He's not trying to show you up. He doesn't have the arms and the hands going. I mean, God, if we saw that from Jalen Hurts, we'd know something is certainly amiss. Hurts did say after the game that sometimes things necessitate you kind of going out of character a little bit. And so it was when he was asked about that clip. That's the kind of fire that you want to see from a leader. That's the kind of fire that you want to see from a guy that has led you to a Super Bowl twice, has led you to a Super Bowl win once, has won a Super Bowl MVP. Here's the thing that I've just had a hard time dealing with, right? And this has happened through the first 2 weeks of the season, and it certainly happened through the first half of the third game of the season against the Rams. You have a lot of people going on Twitter saying, oh, well, what's going on with the passing game? Did Jalen Hurts regress? Does Jalen Hurts just not want to get the ball to A.J. Brown? What's going on? And then you start seeing people taking shots at some of the radio hosts, right? Mostly the WIP radio hosts, because they've essentially been kind of saying, well, I don't know, Jalen Hurts, it's just not looking like the kind that we expected him to be. It doesn't look like the Jalen Hurts who was the Super Bowl MVP. You start getting that kind of shit spinning up, and it drives you nuts. And so I saw somebody tweeted at Spike Eskin like, well, clearly the Eagles have been listening to you and your show, and so that's why the passing game looks so bad, which is ridiculous. But here's the thing. When the second half actually happened, right, something changed. Was it Jalen Hurts talking to his offensive coordinator, talking to Nick Sirianni, talking to someone else on the sideline saying, this conservative shit has to stop. We need to get back to what works. And what works? Getting our playmakers involved, getting the ball to A.J. Brown, getting the ball to Devontae Smith, getting the ball to Dallas Goedert, getting Saquon Barkley open in space and making things happen and letting the playmakers make plays. When the Eagles went down the field and scored their first touchdown of the second half, you felt a monumental shift in energy. When they scored to get to 26-21, you felt like a monumental shift. Once again, you kind of started to feel like, wow, this might actually be attainable. Now, people got on the defense a little bit in this game as well because the defense did struggle at times, right? The defense did have some issues. We saw Davante Adams blow the top off the defense for, I think it was a 44-yard touchdown against Reed Blankenship. And going into this game, Davante Adams was asked about what it was going to be like to be shadowed by Quinyon Mitchell, right? Because Mitchell was supposed to be the one who was going to be on top of Davante Adams the entire game. And so people saw the Blankenship touchdown, and I think they conflated that with, oh, Mitchell also gave up a bunch of passes, gave up a bunch of receptions. Well, it's important for us to take a look at how exactly Quinyon Mitchell performed against Davante Adams, because we saw Blankenship got blown by. There's no doubt about it. There was that push off, right? A lot of people felt like Davante Adams pushed off Blankenship. It was a short burst of the arm, but it caused enough of a stutter. You even saw Blankenship kind of wave the arms. Davante Adams brings in the ball. Let's go out to Next Gen Stats, though, because Next Gen Stats will tell the full story. We'll tell you the picture. Here it is. So Quinyon Mitchell shadowed Davante Adams on 27 of 34 routes in Week 3. That's 79.4% of Davante Adams' routes in Week 3. It was the first game of Quinyon Mitchell's career where he shadowed a receiver on over 60% of the routes. That's a good sign, by the way, right? Second-year player. You're now seeing if he can be a shutdown corner who can travel with a number one wideout the entirety of a game. All right, let's get into the actual results. Mitchell matched up against Adams 22 times after the snap, allowing just 2 receptions for 12 yards on 5 targets. So again, that's 40% of the targets that went his way, he completed a reception. That means 60% of the time the ball went to Davante Adams with Quinyon Mitchell on him. He did not make a reception. 12 total yards. And there it is. Adams' only other reception came on a 44-yard touchdown against Reed Blankenship. And if you look at his routes here, you can see, let's see, we'll try to highlight here. You can see this is the 44-yard bomb that Davante Adams caught. If If you want to call it the push-off on Reed Blankenship, you certainly can. And then look at where else he was able to catch. So you have this kind of underneath route around 5 yards or so on the right side here. He picked up a little bit of yards, right? Maybe a yard after the catch. And he's got this little curl guy right here where he didn't really pick up anything. So Quinyon Mitchell, the results there were very positive in week 3. That is a huge sign. And it's funny because Davante Adams was trying to be respectful going into it, right? But Davante Adams said something to the effect of, he's a really good player. Hopefully I'll be able to show him a few things that he hasn't seen yet. Well, Davante Adams is still a really good receiver. He did not show Quinyon Mitchell anything that he hasn't been used to seeing before. Now, I do want to get to a couple of the other things. Before I do, really quickly, I want to go out to the comments here, and then we're going to get back into the Eagles, and we're going to get to a little bit of Flyers, and then we're going to head out for the day. Okay. Let's see. Ford is here. Says, Eagles thoughts. Imagine if Patullo had called good plays, like, throw the pigskin to your wide receivers and call creative plays in the first half. Fawcett is here. Says, Eagles look fine in the second half. Greg Bondarenko's here. Says, morning, Russ and friends. Hello, Greg. Hope you're doing well. Joe Fisher is here with a hello. Hello, Joe. Landros, too. Watched the Eagles' first half from my golf cart, caught the end, which turned out to be one for the ages. Fantastic stuff. Let's see. Ford says, Eagles' offense has a ton of talent. Coaches need to utilize the talent correctly. Exactly. Landros says, Patullo needs to get out of his way. That is true. Chris Freed's down in Orlando says, mystery of travel question. Why is there not one single Wawa at Philly International? That is a good question. I've never thought about it. There is a La Colombe, though, or there might be 2. I'm going to hit up the La Colombe when I fly out for work in a couple of weeks. Looking very forward to it. Ford also has a good point here. Lane Johnson may be the most critical player on the Eagles. I mean, look, they said it on the telecast. Obviously, the number one player that's the most critical as of right now, right, is Jalen Hurts. The second most critical player, it seems, is Lane Johnson, and I'd say probably third is Jordan Mailata, right, your blindside tackle. But man, when you lose Lane Johnson, thank God for Fred Johnson, man, because if Matt Pryor had to stay in that game, I'm not so sure that we're talking about a 3-0 Eagles team. And that's no offense to Matt Pryor. Might be a nice guy, might be a good player, just had a really bad day. But it was a rough day for Matt Pryor. You get Fred Johnson out there, who, again, looked like the adult in the room, and he got the job done. It's fantastic stuff. Now, here's Jalen Hurts post-game, right? So Jalen Hurts talks to Pam Oliver down on the field after the game, and I think it's really important to kind of look at the body language of Jalen Hurts, listen to the words of Jalen Hurts, because, we all know that Jalen Hurts likes to be calm, cool, collected, composed. He typically has a comment that belongs on one of those posters in a principal's office or maybe a boss's office, right, where there's the image and then the one big word and a little subheading, motivation, the thing that gets people excited to go to work, whatever it is. Jalen Hurts usually has 1 or 2 of those locked and loaded. He did not have one of those immediately after the game with Pam Oliver, but I do want to go out to it because this to me felt like a very candid Jalen Hurts after Jordan Davis blocks the potential game-winning field goal for the Rams and takes it back to the house for a 33-27 win. Let's go out to Jalen Hurts.
Jalen, what a comeback, a lot of memorable moments in this ball game. What are you going to take away from a victory like today?
First of all, dude's smiling. I know that sometimes there's this idea that Hurts is so stoic. Does he actually enjoy the wins? Does he enjoy the games? Of course he does. Here he is, big smile, and you can see he's trying to formulate, all right, what quote am I going to give here? What kind of a motivational quote can I provide to Pam Oliver? All right, let's hear what he has to say. We're a few seconds in and there's still nothing. He's thinking.
Regardless, it's always good to get a win. It's always good to get a win.
All right, we've heard this one before, Jalen. It's always good to get a win. Yes, we know. Yes, we know QB1. Continue.
And if that doesn't show you what type of team we are, I don't know what does. Now, we completely did that to ourselves in the first half. Completely. I mean, absolutely completely did that to ourselves. And that's something we gotta fix.
So I love that part of it, right? And you should too. If you're an Eagles fan, you should love the fact that Jalen Hurts took accountability for the first half. Because as much as we like to dunk on Kevin Patullo, as much as we like to dunk on the offense from the first 2 weeks and the first half of this game against the Rams, because it looked bad, and they were not getting the ball to the biggest playmakers on the team, and they were not creating space or any kind of meaningful lanes for Saquon Barkley to, run to set up the pass game or get the ball to the playmakers on the outside to use the pass game to set up the run game. There still is some accountability that has to fall on the players. Like, the play calling might suck, but the players still have to figure out a way to execute those plays and perhaps find the end zone a few times in the first half of a game. They didn't do it. So, would it be easy for Jalen Hurts to say, first half, we're just going to shake it off? No. He says, we did this to ourselves. Like, he says, if this doesn't show you the kind of team we are, I don't know what will. That is talking about the holistic effort of the offense, the defense, special teams, that they put it all together, that they didn't give up. When they go down 26-7 in the second half, they don't give up, they fight back, and they just find ways to win. What do we always say? Good teams are able to win games that they should probably win. Great teams find a way to win. Generational teams, historic teams, potential dynasty teams, they find a way to find a win and to create a win from what otherwise appears to be a surefire loss. This was one of those games where if you are starting to lock yourself into the mentality of the Eagles have a legitimate chance of going back and winning a second Super Bowl, winning consecutive Super Bowls, maybe having their own version of a dynasty, this game against the Rams is the kind of game that should set off all of those good alarms in your head. Because this is a game that most teams in this league would have quit. This is a game at 26-7 in the second half that a lot of teams would have kind of rolled over and died, and yet this Eagles team didn't do that. All right, let's get back out to Jalen Hurts.
It's as simple as that. It's unacceptable.
It's like you guys said later for this. Whatever happened in that first half, forget about it. Let's go and show who we are.
We play so many styles of football where in that first half, we got to get out of this plan not to lose. We got to come out aggressive and play our game.
I'm going to re-rack part of what he just said because this is something that you also heard from A.J. Brown post-game and I think is a very astute point.
That first half, we got to get out of this plan not to lose.
We got to get out of this playing not to lose. That overly conservative style we saw through 2.5 games.
We got to come out aggressive and play our game. You saw our game in the second half.
What about Big Boy with the block?
Now we get to Jordan Davis.
And chugging down the field.
I knew he was going to block it. I just knew he was going to block it. That's just a great effort, man. Great effort by everybody. It was frustrating. It was challenging, but it was gritty. And everybody got together and made plays when we needed to. And that's all that matters. That's all that matters. But we will fix the things that we need to fix.
That's what you want to hear. So at the end there, we're going to fix the things we need to fix. Again, you're excited, you're elated. He's laughing about Jordan Davis going the length of the field, but he's not going to lose sight of the fact that, like, the first half was unacceptable. And I will go to this real quick because Chris Fried throws this idea out here. Eagles did not win this game. Rams lost it. Russ, you're reading too much into it. I disagree. This was not a case of the Rams flat out losing the game. Could we maybe try to find a middle ground here and say the Eagles played their asses off in the second half, and the Rams failed to execute? Yes. I mean, listen, you're 2 field goals or even 1 blocked field goal away from this being a Rams win. Special teams executed on a different level. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis next to each other were absolute dogs. I don't just mean Georgia Bulldogs, I mean dogs. They looked sensational. This offense found a rhythm, started eating some clock the way that you expect this Eagles offense to do it. And once the defense finally had an opportunity to rest because the Eagles offense was able to stay out on the field for a while, they certainly looked better. There were some big plays in this game. What was his name? Bennett making a few really good, smart plays in the secondary late in this game. A lot of things to look at in the second half and say, no, this wasn't just like the Rams choked the game away. The Eagles grabbed this game by the huevos, and they didn't let go. All right, let me go back to a couple of other things from this game before we move on and off the Eagles. We talked about the fact that Jordan Davis hit nearly 19 miles per hour. It is, as I said earlier, the fastest speed reached by a player 330 pounds or heavier since 2017. Now, there's a really important thing that we have to call out here, right? In the case of Jordan Davis, last year, I think all of us remember, there was a video going around of Brian Baldinger kind of calling out, and I think it's fair to say, calling out Jordan Davis, saying that Jordan Davis looked out of shape, that he didn't look like himself, didn't look like the guy the Eagles drafted. And what is one of the things that we knew about Jordan Davis going into this year? We said he looks great, he looks like he lost weight, looks svelte. Jordan Davis is showing you exactly why it's important that you have, one, a coach that holds you accountable. And I would say that that coach in this instance is Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator. You have a coach who holds you accountable, and you have a player who realizes how important it is to heed their advice. Because make no mistake about it, Vic Fangio probably had at least one or two conversations with Jordan Davis about the weight and about how in order for him to be as impactful as he could be, the weight had to come down. And it did. And now you're seeing the benefit, right? You're seeing how it's benefiting the team, which has to give him a bit of a morale boost as well. Week 1, Jalen Carter, before a play has even been played, before a snap has been taken by the Cowboys, Jalen Carter, spitgate. Dak spits, Jalen Carter spits on Dak, gets ejected from the game. Jordan Davis plays more snaps than he's ever played in a game, or a higher snap percentage than he's ever played in a game. Couldn't have done that if he's got 30, 40 extra pounds on him like last year. That was almost like the first kind of like tip of the cap that Jordan Davis was getting things done. We saw him collapse the pocket a lot in the second week of the season, and now in week 3, you see him go out there, and I'm not saying that the loss of weight is how he's able to get an extra inch or two on that leap and get that big paw up there to bat down the ball. But like, let's be real. Jordan Davis ain't running that ball back to the house for a touchdown with an extra 30 or 40 pounds on him. There's no chance in hell that would have happened. How do I know? Because he told us as much postgame. That's right. Jordan Davis opened up postgame and said, yeah, if this were last year and I blocked that field goal, I'm not running that shit back. There's no way. Let's go out to Jordan Davis here really quick. This is Jordan Davis postgame talking about the losing weight.
Look at field goal block as just another play, just another down. Put your hands up, get off the field, check a box. But the way we talked about it on the sideline, we knew, especially off his last kick, we knew his angle. We knew his launch point when it's at the 30-yard line, somewhere around there. And we just hit.
By the way, that sounds so scientific, doesn't it? I mean, we all kind of know that this is how it works. But like the launch point, you're thinking about the angle, the trajectory in order to get that ball as far as it needs to go for a field goal. And this is actually why it got a little bit frustrating, right? Late in that game, that final drive by the Rams, you're watching them give up small chunk yardage plays. You're going, all right, that's 3 or 4 extra yards. That makes it a little bit easier. That allows you to maybe loft it, especially since the Rams had their last kick blocked. You start to think about, all right, we're going to pop this up at a higher angle to get over those big paws of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. All right, let's go back out.
Yeah, put our hands up at the right time, and then I seen the ball on the ground, and then at that point, I knew it was a no-my situation, but it just took off from there. I wanted possession, so I wanted to make sure that we ended the game right. Didn't know I was going to go that fast, didn't know I was going to make it all the way to the end zone. Just started running it. My legs carried me.
So there's him talking about the fact that he managed to get himself to the end zone. And there was somewhere else that he actually talked about the fact that, like, last year, there's no chance he would have made it all the way to the end zone. So that's a pretty cool thing as well. If you want another fun little post-game nugget to come out of the game, it was this. Jordan Mailata finds A.J. Brown in the tunnel post-game. And, you know, A.J. Brown had a hell of a game, had a really big, impactful game, had over 100 yards receiving, touchdown. Jordan Mailata, who we all love, right? Big old dude. Watch what Mailata does to A.J. Brown in the tunnel. Here it is. Watch this. Boom! I love this so much. He delivers like the little body shot. He goes, fuck yeah. And then when he sees A.J. Brown double, he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, this is great. That's fun. You get Mailata just constantly apologizing. But that's like a fun little moment post-game between two of the most impactful players on this team, and they're taking things the right way. They're doing things the right way. Now, one of the things that I didn't show you from this game, and we're not going to do now, but one of the things that came out after the game, Jalen Carter talks to the media, and he's wearing a hell of a chain around his neck. And you go, all right, hold on a sec. I actually found it. Here we go. He's wearing this chain, and it's got a number 8 on it. And you go, all right, well, that's not Jalen Carter's number. why the hell is Jalen Carter wearing a number 8 chain? So remember how last year in the playoffs, Jared Verse and Jalen Carter had a back and forth pregame? Well, in this game, pregame, Jared Verse ended up in the Eagles' end zone again. And now Carter went over, and it was a perfectly fine thing. And what's his name? Clint Hurt, the defensive line coach, was also with Jalen Carter. And they go over and they're chatting. But look at this. So this means that Jared Verse put his chain up, and there's a lot of money in that chain. He puts that chain on the line. So presumably, they had a chain for chain bet on who was going to win this game. Jalen Carter walks away with Jared Verse's chain, and that is not a cheap piece of bling. So that's a fun little nugget to come out of the game. Now, listen, we could also get into the fact that Jalen Carter had a moment in this game where he got called for a taunt again, and it was not a very smart thing to do, and it put the Eagles closer to their backs against the end zone. Not ideal. Okay, fine. We could. Now, last thing I want to get to from the Eagles game before we pivot to the Flyers and to a sad note and also a little bit of a good note on the Flyers. I want to get to Dan Orlovsky this morning talking over on Get Up because we knew, right, going into the season that there were a lot of doubters around Jalen Hurts. There were a lot of doubters about where Jalen Hurts belonged in the hierarchy of quarterbacks. We saw him ranked around 9. We saw him ranked around 11. Some people would argue maybe like 3 or 4, but certainly we were getting a lot of 9s, some 10s. There was a question in local radio, is Jalen Hurts not even going to make the top 25 of the NFL top 100 list, which was ridiculous at the time. But I want to go out to Orlovsky because I feel like this is where you're going to start to see a shift of narrative around Jalen Hurts. Let's go out to Orlovsky.
And that second half was about as good as I've seen him play. I think it's about as good as you can play. I mean, there was 3 or 4 plays in that second half that you go, that's the play of the game. That's the play of the game. The double
And that is true.
move to A.J. Brown, the touchdown pass to A.J. Brown when he checks it, the 3rd and 10 in route to Devontae Smith, the 4th and goal ball where he sees the safety and Devontae wins on that little out route. It was just
These are all smart plays. These are all smart calls. All right.
unbelievable. I love the way that they put A.J. Brown by himself on those 3rd downs and said, we got the best receiver in football, or certainly one of them. Let's go give him a chance. And
That's one of the things, right, that Hurts essentially said post-game. Got to get out of this play not to lose. Let the winners win, okay?
The thing that stands out to me, the throws are perfect. Yeah. As much as sometimes, and I've been critical of this. Of
Here you go.
Is Jalen Hurts that good at throwing the ball? Now, A.J. going back, strong hands on some of those curl routes. But the fact that they made that adjustment to put A.J. by himself and said,
this is not a hard call, by the way, to put A.J. Brown out by himself if they're going to only single cover him. Okay.
go win. Jalen made the plays, and I think that Fred Johnson going to right tackle was a big deal because after Lane Johnson got hurt prior.
Dan Orlovsky and I are on the same page. Anyway, the rest of what he has to say is essentially all that, right? It's just a lot of smart, heady plays, and it is a guy that has been doubted who continues to find ways to win in this league and find ways to win in a meaningful way. So that's good, and we can all feel good about it. Now, I was going to take you to one thing with the Flyers, and there's a sad thing that came out of Flyers land, and I want to end with Flyers land, and I saw this comment here by Idol76 say, disrespectful, you didn't start the show off about Bernie's passing, because I want to get to Bernie at the end of the show, not at the start of the show, and there's a reason for it, and I'll get there in a second. If you are a Flyers fan, you got to see a couple of things on Thursday night that should make you feel pretty good. Now, admittedly, I did not watch the full game in its entirety, but I did see enough of the game to get a better feel for like some of the things that we could very much have an eye on throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, and then going into the season. Most notably, there is a clip going around on Twitter this morning of a Nikita Grabenkin, Trevor Zegras, Matvei Mishkov line, and their ability to keep possession, maintain possession in the offensive zone at 5-on-5. And if you think back to last year's Flyers team, they were horrific. I mean, listen, the power play was dreadful, right? The Rocky Thompson horror show, that was it. The Rocky Thompson horror show was legitimately the most frustrating power play to watch in the entire National Hockey League, and it was for years. They were awful on the power play. But man, there were times at 5-on-5 where you would watch the Flyers and just wonder how they ever scored a goal. right? Because they would spend so much time in their own end. They couldn't break the play out. They couldn't win the puck on a 50-50 puck in the neutral zone. And when they'd get into the offensive zone, it would often look like they were shorthanded, right? It looked like they didn't have the ability to possess the puck. They didn't have any creativity or anyone who could execute at a high enough level. It felt like the last year's Flyers team was devoid of talent. Spoiler alert, they were. They were devoid of a lot of talent. They were devoid of a lot of high-end talent. So last night, you get to see this Gurbenkin, Zegras, Mishkov line. Do I think that's going to be a starting line on opening night? I have no clue. Do I think that Nikita Gurbenkin is going to be on the team to start the season? I also don't know. He had a very impressive rookie camp. He had some impressive performances against in the rookie showcase games. Gurbenkin looks like a guy who could potentially make this team. And for a team that has no expectations, for a team that has absolutely nothing from fan expectations in terms of them immediately having to hit the ground running and trying to make the playoffs, could I see a scenario where you get a Nikita Gurbenkin on this team to start the year? Yeah. Could I see Alex Bump making the team to start the year? Yeah. Could I see Jet Lachenko making the team to start the year? I don't know. But Gurbenkin is an interesting one. Now, Tocchet has kind of thrown out this idea of having player duos. And this is something that Tortorella also did from time to time, right? The idea that you would have two players that you want to kind of tether together, and then instead of blowing up entire lines, it's keep those two players together and rotate in the third player. So I would fully expect that Rick Tocchet throughout the preseason is going to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the correct dynamic is, who the best player is to pair with Zegras and with Mishkov. And if the first preseason game against the Islanders is to give us an idea of what could come down the pike, Gurbenkin looked like he fit in very well with those two. Now, again, it's very early. It's the first preseason game. Nothing is really going on right now, right? You can't take a whole lot out of the first preseason game and say that is going to be gospel and that's going to be how the regular season is going to play out. None of that is necessarily true. But it does make you feel a little bit better. The Zegras of it all is where I think things get really interesting because Tocchet has now a few times said that they want to see Zegras at center, but he needs to understand what they want out of a center. They're kind of allowing themselves a little bit of flexibility on the team side to maybe play Zegras at wing if it doesn't work at center. But I think they are going to go into this season fully anticipating Trevor Zegras is going to be one of their centers. And if that's the case, boy, oh boy, if you have Mishkov on a line with Zegras, and whether it's Gurbenkin or someone else, maybe a healthy Tyson Forster eventually, that could be a very interesting line. Being able to have Konechny and Couturier on a line together, or maybe you have Zegras and Couturier, or Zegras and Konechny together at some point, could work as well. Where does Owen Tippett fit into all of it? There are going to be some line combos that I think are going to be very interesting this year. We'll see them throughout the preseason. If nothing else, it looks like a much more talented team. You're starting to see at least a little bit of, obviously, what the Ducks saw in Zegras when they drafted him, what they saw in Zegras for years that led to them hanging on to him for so long. The key for the Flyers is to make sure they're putting him in a position that they don't end up seeing what the Ducks saw in their willingness to trade Zegras this past offseason. Let me see if I can go over here really quickly. Chris Freed says Penn State has more top-end talent than the Flyers do this year. Well, it doesn't hurt to have Gavin McKenna. I don't know if I'd totally agree with that, but yeah. JH says hockey battle buddies is a great idea. I don't disagree. Let's see. Joe Fisher says, I love Tocchet, said he and Chief still talk. It is a good thing. Tony Louis says, if Forster is ready for opening night, it would be hard for Gurbenkin to make the team unless they put one of Couturier, Zegras, Cates, or Dvorak on the fourth line. I think Dvorak will be on the fourth line. Like that's not the part that would surprise me. Cates, Cates will be on the team. I think they're going to try to find a spot for Gurbenkin if he continues to play well. You kind of have to. Just because they signed Dvorak in the offseason doesn't mean he needs to play every night. I think they'd be happy to have a young guy step up and almost steal that spot back. Gary Oak says over on YouTube, Nesbitt looked great, as did Drysdale. It's the thing that we've been talking about. You can go back to the Snow the Goalie interview that we did with Jack Nesbitt back at Dev Camp. Keeps talking about that first stride. If he can speed up that first stride, make it a powerful first stride, and get himself on the move faster, right, with more momentum, it's going to allow him to break out And it's going to ultimately lead to a lot more success at the NHL level. Now, the good news, obviously, is that he still has time. He has time to develop. There's nobody right now holding the proverbial gun to the head of the Flyers front office saying Jack Nesbitt needs to be on the team to start this year. But man, if Nesbitt can continue to develop the way that he has so far this offseason, right, through prospect camp, through dev camp, through rookie camp, and into training camp, I hope the Flyers hang on to Nesbitt as long as they can up until the final cuts. Give him as much of an opportunity to play around these coaches and with this organization and with the top-end players on this team. And there is a non-zero chance that next year, if things continue on their current trajectory, that Jack Nesbitt could be on this team as early as the 26-27 season. Could happen. He's a huge body. I want to take you guys back to what Schaefer said going into the NHL draft. Schaefer said that the biggest horse in the league, the biggest horse in this draft class, was none other than Jack Nesbitt. And if that's the case, we are bound for potential greatness, my friends. I am very intrigued by Jack Nesbitt as a prospect. I'm very intrigued by Jack Nesbitt as a guy who I think is ultimately going to help this team win in the future. Luchenko, still not sure. Tony Louis says, so Luchenko isn't going back to juniors, right? I have no idea. He says, didn't Guelph name a new captain and Jet said bye to them or something? I saw that they named a captain. I don't know. I just don't know what to make of Luchenko. I really don't. Again, not here to poo-poo on the guy, not here to say that the guy stinks or he's not going to be able to become a very good player for this team in the future. I just don't totally see it with him the way that I kind of do with a Nesbitt. Make of that what you will. Hopefully, he ends up finding a ton of success in this league and he lives up to that first round, draft pick hype, and we can all feel pretty good about it. But we will see. Now, last thing I want to get to is something that was just devastating. If you're a Flyers fan, Bernie Parent has meant so much to Flyers fans. He's meant so much to the organization. He's meant so much to hockey, to the NHL, to the legacy of the Broad Street Bullies, to the city of Philadelphia, to all Philadelphia sports. And I never have had a death in the Philly sports landscape kind of hit me the way that the Bernie Parent one did. Now, when Roy Halladay died, I'd never met Roy Halladay. It was just sad because of how young he was and how you kind of think about how a guy like that should have a lot of years left in him as a coach. Somebody who would be around at all of the Hall of Fame inductions, the Wall of Fame inductions, would be a guy that would be around this organization, maybe eventually take on a commentary role. Like, we all kind of expected that was going to happen with Roy Halladay, right? Bernie Parent lived a long life. Bernie Parent lived a very presumably happy life. I mean, I will take you back to an interview that we did with him on Snow the Goalie. I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And Bernie Parent brought light into every room he walked into. And he left an impact with, I think, everyone that he met. So just to give you some context, sometimes you have somebody who comes on a show. It's a good interview. You shake hands, you walk away, everything's fine. That's it. Sometimes you have an interview that goes off and you go, all right, that was fine. Wish it could have been better. Wish there could have been more to it. Wish the guy had been a little bit more open, a little bit more honest, whatever. That was not the case with Bernie Parent. Bernie hopped on to Snow the Goalie twice from what I can remember. One time was when Glenn Macnow released a new beer at Puddler's Kitchen, right, Conchi Brewing. And Bernie was there, and that's when I learned that Bernie doesn't drink. And that was not shocking, I guess, but I didn't realize that he didn't drink. And so at that event, I got off the one of the mics. We only had 3 mics that night. I got off, and Bernie asked for a club soda. So I went, and I went to the bar. I waited in line. I got a club soda for Bernie. Happy guy, happy-go-lucky man. But what I love the most is when he came back on the show. I think it was in 2024. Bernie came on the show at a Snyder Youth Hockey fundraiser fantasy draft, right? And at this fantasy draft, he hopped on the show. And I want to play for you just a little bit of the audio from that show. And this is kind of how I want to end it today, because I really do believe that in this life, you don't have a lot of people that you run across or you come across that bring as much light and as joy to a room as Bernie Parent did. And I just want you to hear the back and forth between really Bernie and Ant and Bernie and Bundy. He has 2 one-liners in like the first minute of being on the show that made me cackle and kind of warm the cockles of my heart to hear it now. I'm going to take the comments down here so we can get this. But here's Bernie on Snow the Goalie. I think this is back in 2024.
The great Bernard Marcel Parent. Where is he?
He starts with a where is he?
Bernie, so good to see you again.
It's good to see you.
Last time we had you on was at the Jonesy Beer event at Conshohocken Brewing Company.
Wow.
And that was it was good to catch up with you then.
That's a long time ago. Jesus was alive.
It's a long time ago. Jesus was alive. All right. He has another one loaded up.
Season flew by, though, eh, Bern? Because that was like the first 10 games, and now the season's over. It's like, oh, my God, that was so fast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Life, you have to enjoy. Life goes by fast, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a pick. Let us turn your beautiful wife for the pick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we're about to get to,
That's awesome.
I think this is
That's
an ant
awesome.
question.
So
that
how
we
you
said.
doing, Bernie? How you feeling?
With my hands. Yeah. Yeah. But
There's a stand-up comedy club.
How you feeling with my hands? Bernie was a lovely guy. Every time I bumped into him, I ran into him. I do not think that Bernie Parent was listening to Snow the Goalie. I don't imagine that Bernie Parent had any idea who I was. But I will say the second time that I met him, we did have this conversation about the first time he was on the show. Lovely man. And I think that what you ultimately saw after the news broke about Bernie passing away, you saw a unanimous outpour of love and support. You saw radio hosts, you saw people from TV, from newspapers, people who covered him, fans who met him. It was like the one beautiful thing, right, is when somebody reaches a certain level of fame, right, you can either be the person who gives back or you could be the person who is unwilling to give back and kind of is dismissive. Bernie was the guy who gave back. Bernie's the guy who, when you would walk up to him, if your kids were around, he would take a picture, he'd shake a hand, he'd sign an autograph. And you would walk away from that experience feeling better for it. You would shake Bernie Parent's hand, or you would say hi to Bernie Parent, and he would kind of warm your soul, and you would walk away feeling like, man, that's a guy that has lived a great life and will go out of his way to make you feel special. And in fairness, like, that's not something you're necessarily owed, right? If you're a player who has reached the pinnacle of the sport, who's won Stanley Cups, you don't necessarily owe it to anybody to make them feel special, and yet he did. And so if you search his name on Twitter, you'll find myriad pictures and stories. And so I thought that sharing a little bit of what he did with us over on Snow the Goalie a year or so ago was probably about the best kind of tribute I can. I mean, JH here says he inspired my love of goalies. Landros says he was a great person. Bondarenko says Bernie's legacy will live forever. Raymond Supper says Phil Esposito gave the greatest tribute to Bernie when he said he needed a bazooka to score a goal in the last game of the finals in '74, and unfortunately NHL rules didn't let him have one. Gary Oak says Bernie reminds me a lot of my grandpa. Even though I never met him in person, he lives on, and the stories of his kindness, cleverness, and spirit, what a guy. I think it's a great place to end. I wanted to end on a little bit of an uplift, end up on a little bit of positivity. You find a little bit of sadness, some darkness, but this is really just a sadness, right? That even though he's lived a full life, it feels like he had more life to give. And so we wish his family and his friends and everybody who's been impacted by the passing of Bernie Sanders, we wish them all of the best. A great guy, somebody who did bring a lot of smiles to a lot of faces in this area and in the hockey community as a whole. So thank you, and rest in peace to Bernie Parent. I will be back on Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Until then, do me a favor, like the video, share the video, and subscribe on YouTube. You can also subscribe to the Joy Media channel on YouTube. You can subscribe to both of those channels on Facebook as well. You can also find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Do me a favor, leave a 5-star rating if you can on Spotify and Apple Music. If you can leave, or Apple Podcasts, if you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, I'll read it on the show. And do me a favor, on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube Shorts, if you see the short form content, give it a thumbs up, follow the channels, follow the accounts there. I will be back. Did I say Bernie Sanders? Did I say Sanders? All right, if I said Sanders, rest in peace to Bernie Perrant, not Bernie Sanders, at least that we know of. All right, it's time to go. I hope everybody has a great day. I will be back on Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Until then, I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. And it's also the name of the show. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you very soon. Bye now.